Hare Krishna. We are chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga. And for those who are really into Hatha Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, meditation, these chapters are of great interest to you, and they are called the Dhyana Yoga chapters. And we begin at the 6th verse. Of course, it begins at the first verse, but we're selecting certain verses. And this verse reads as follows, and I'm reading the Sanskrit, and then I'll read also the purport. Bandhuratmatmanastasya jinatmaivatmanajita anatmanastu shatrutve varte tatmaiva shatruvat. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. Pretty good. For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. And the purport is as follows. The purpose of practicing Eightfold Yoga is to control the mind in order to make it a friend and discharging the human mission. Unless the mind is controlled, the practice of yoga for show is simply a waste of time. One who cannot control his mind lives always with the greatest enemy, and thus his life and its mission are spoiled. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. As long as one's mind remains an unconquered enemy, one has to serve the dictations of lust, anger, avarice, illusion, etc. But when the mind is conquered, one voluntarily agrees to abide by the dictation of the personality of Godhead, who is situated within the heart of everyone as Paramatma. Real yoga practice entails meeting the Paramatma within the heart and then following his dictation. For one who takes to Krishna consciousness directly, perfect surrender to the dictation of the Lord follows automatically. There are different texts that talk about different types of yoga. It's very clear that in those yoga texts which speak about bhakti yoga, then the real purpose of yoga is fully brought out. And that's why I referred to earlier as the yoga ladder, as the system of elevation, and meditation as a means to attaining bhakti is a authorized process. It is just a process that becomes very difficult in our time because it takes a long time. And that's why the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, the chanting of the names of the Supreme, is considered the authorized process, because by that chanting, by meditation on the holy names, then one achieves the same benefit that through the process of meditation one would have attained in tens of thousands of years. That can be attained just in one lifetime. So it's a good investment. But there's a problem. And that problem, for whatever type of yoga you practice, jnana, hatha, karma, bhakti, is the mind. The mind is our problem. And when we're trying to meditate on nothing, when you want to clear your mind, when you meditate on some particular object, when you meditate on what is being recommended here, which is the Paramatma or the Super Soul, who is in everybody's heart. I referred to that at an earlier talk. or whether you're meditating on the names of the Lord, this obstacle of the mind remains the same. The mind is uncontrolled. The mind is originally designed to assist us in meditation, but we've let our mind go free, uncontrolled, as it's stated here in the purport. The constitutional position of the living entity is to carry out the order of the superior. The mind is meant to carry out the order of the superior. What's that? What's superior to the mind? I spoke about that also, if you remember. It is the intelligence. Do we have that kind of intelligence to know what we are supposed to do? Unfortunately, the answer is no. Our intelligence is being used for technology, for aerospace industry, for all types of things, but it's not used for self-realization. And therefore, the mind is at loose ends. And of course, what do all of these other things? What is technology and what is industry? What is it all about? It's all about consumerism. Consumerism is all about enjoying yourself. It's all about the things that you don't need, not the things that you do need. And because many of these things we don't need, then what do we do? Well, we entertain ourselves with them. That's called sense gratification. And when we let our senses go and when we let our mind go, because our mind is supposed to be engaging our senses to assist us in self-realization, such as hearing the mantra, such as focusing on whatever the object of meditation is, now it's gone amok. And therefore, controlling the mind becomes a really difficult problem. But the nature of the mind is to listen to a superior, and therefore, Bhagavad Gita, transcendental knowledge, strengthening the intelligence, and strengthening the intelligence, controlling the mind on one side, and on the other side, knowing what is the kind of lifestyle we're meant to live that's favorable for real self-realization, because lifestyle means control of the senses. So it's like a wild horse. You tie him down on two sides. You just tie him on one side, it keeps moving. Tie him on two sides, he has to stay put. Tie down the mind on one side with the senses, with living the type of life that's favorable for spiritual development, and cultivating that knowledge by which the intelligence becomes strong and the intelligence can start ordering the mind. You cannot do that. And for that, we have to take guidance and direction from the Supreme. And what happens when a dhyana yogi is really successful in bhakti meditation? Well, he will see the supersoul in the heart, this Paramatma. Who is the Paramatma? I had mentioned that there are three levels of realization of the Supreme. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti sabdyate. Brahmeti, his potencies are spread everywhere. In one sense, everything is God, but in another sense, he's different from everything. And he's also within our hearts. Intuition, when something tells us that's wrong, that's Paramatma speaking from within. In the heart, beside the soul, the example is given as two birds sitting on a branch of a tree. The soul is in the heart, and right beside the soul is the super soul. And aside from the super soul who is in everybody's heart, it's the same Supreme Person in everyone's heart, but Goloka iva nivashyati akilatma bhuto. He also exists separate from everything as a supreme, all-powerful being. It requires control of the mind in order to understand these things, appreciate these things. And until we get control of our minds, it is our greatest enemy. Uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy. But when you control that mind, then it becomes a friend, because that's what the mind is designed for, helping us to be absorbed in thoughts of and service of the Supreme, practicing yoga. So the mind's not the problem. It's a question of how the mind is trained. And now, if you want to do yoga, you can do asanas till the cows come home. But unless you have full control over your mind, then, as it's stated here, it's all for naught. So making the greatest enemy into the greatest friend. It's possible, but that's what yoga is all about. Hare Krishna.